There's a massive bug in Romancing SaGa 1 that is literally referenced as a memory destruction glitch. There's an incredibly precise reset technique to corrupt saves in order to beat Romancing SaGa 2. Heck, even Romancing SaGa 3 makes characters die to access a secret area that basically makes the player god. I made a poll a few days back asking which obscure RPG you would choose, and ignoring that Evo exists, Romancing SaGa actually won. So I decided to start playing through one of the games since it showed up on Xbox Game Pass not too long ago. And honestly, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing for like the first 30 minutes. I also started with Romancing SaGa 2, so I know that's not really my best decision, but I didn't feel like getting into playing a translation patch of 1 or grabbing a copy of the PS2 version. Don't blame me, I'm just lazy. Anyways, when I get into a new RPG, I tend to look into how the speedruns work, and for this series, it was everything I could hope for. From credits warps that don't work half the time for reasons unknown, to speeding through noble devils with a previously cleared save file, this small but dedicated community has many different ways they take on these games. Starting with the first entry in the series, Romancing SaGa 1 is probably the most broken. We're talking about held together by scotch tape and dollar store glue levels of broken. And it all starts with this guy. Runners select Hawk as the first character to use, and go make some pirates angry to get into the first glitch. The Lady Luck's bug is an obscure memory destruction glitch that does some crazy stuff to the game, and it only works when playing as Hawk. Not a lot is known about the mechanics of the bug, but it seems to be an overflow of some values that trigger certain flags while performing the glitch. Runners start by renaming Hawk a specific character and bolt to the pirates' headquarters to interact with the Butcher. After refusing to duel with the power mad dunce, runners leave and re-enter Pirates Cove for story progression reasons, then save and reset the game right outside the headquarters. This allows for NPC movement manipulation that'll be useful for not losing time. After the Butcher rambles on about how you're a traitor and all, the NPCs in the headquarters become enemies and runners need to escape without getting an encounter. This is where the manipulation comes into play, where the NPCs move in a predictable manner and you can perform certain movements to avoid them. Getting back to the ship and going to Oahu, runners talk to the NPCs at the port and re-enter Oahu 10 times. On the 10th consecutive map opening, the game returns you to the main world map and you have to time re-entering Oahu down to a specific frame. If you get the right frame, the game warps you to the final cutscene and then the post-game credits. Unfortunately, how this exactly works and what specific frame is needed to warp to the credits is unknown, but runners have a general idea of when to select Oahu in the map to get a good outcome. Since the glitch is so unstable, many other crazy things can end up happening instead. Warping to the final boss fight, getting random party members and items, and even subscribing to my channel and liking the video. Like I said, crazy stuff. The fastest time for this category is by a runner named Tank Himikawa with a JRTA time of 6 minutes and 55 seconds on December 10th, 2020. This is actually incredibly close to the task made by JP Tasser Oyatsu back on September 9th, 2010. If you want to check out a no major glitches version of this run because you think credits warps are lame, go watch the run by Axium with an end time of 47 minutes and 48 seconds. To this day, the details of the glitch and how everything exactly works are still a mystery, but maybe one of you all watching can solve that one of these days. Okay, so future me here. I reached out to the original fan translation team for the Romancing SaGa 1 English patch to get some more information on how the Lady Luck's bug works and how they fixed it. I haven't received any information as of yet, but if the correspondence unearths anything useful, I'll update the description and the pinned comment. Alright Past Doc, it's all you gamer. Moving on to a less glitch-riddled version of Romancing SaGa 1, the remaster for the PS2 features a massive amount of changes and improvements from its Super Famicom counterpart, with the most notable one being that the game's font looks eerily similar to the one Dark Cloud uses. The game splits into 8 different characters in their respective scenarios, like the first entry. However, since there's not much in the way of glitches, runners have 8 separate categories to choose from, with each character path defining them. Not only that, but runners can opt to use the HDD BB unit in order to save additional time on loading, but these are also separated out to their own overreaching categories since it's absurdly faster than not using it. Out of all the routes, the gray scenario is the fastest out of the bunch. However, since there's no video for either of the fastest times, and the route falls under a run that doesn't use the HDD BB unit, we'll have to look at the fastest time without use of this extra hardware. The fastest time for the gray category is by Sachi with a time of 3 hours, 9 minutes, and 21 seconds. The big thing about this run is to basically increase your event rank by completing battles throughout the game and to receive the final quest in order to beat the final boss and the game. The route also uses something called the Old Castle route over the Netherworld route in other runs, except the Grey and Aisha categories. Now that the first two games are out of the way, and I've been convinced that maybe I should actually play them soon, let's move on to the second game in the series. If you enjoyed how broken the first game in the series was, the Super Famicom version of Romancing SaGa 2 is just as busted. The glitches may not happen as early as the first game, but being able to warp into the credits is possible here as well. There's not a lot of documentation on the English side of these runs, due to the community of the Super Famicom Romancing SaGa games primarily being Japanese. However, thanks to a couple runners in the English community, FFVD Games and Orion, we were able to get together some more detailed info for the video. Runners make use of subframe resets to overwrite certain aspects of the game's data and leave some of the others intact from before the save, resulting in something called save corruption. This is actually very similar to what runners do in the true any % category of Chrono Trigger, which I made a video on last year. Resets that use this method basically take advantage of a point mid-save where the save is overwritten one part of the game, but not another part of the game. This allows for some crazy results when performing this type of corruption. Using this and some weird item management, runners can get to the final cutscene of the game and finish in just under 10 minutes with Japanese RTA timing. The fastest time for the any % category is by a runner named Aqua with a time of 9 minutes and 11 seconds. There's a fair amount of runners of this in several other categories of the game, but as new findings during that time solidified into a route for any %, things slowed down and the runs slowed down overall, leaving activity at a minimum for the last couple of years. I know you all are getting a little bit tired of the credits warps, so thankfully we have the Romancing SaGa 2 remaster that experiences a little bit more of the game. The New Game Plus category takes advantage of a previous max file to blaze through the game. Since the characters are level enough to take on most bosses with ease, runners actually try to evade every encounter possible in the overworld. This can be done with either precise movements or by pause buffering to juke enemies at the last moment. All runners need to do with this, in most instances of the game's runs, is to progress through the ages and get to the last generation of Emperor needed to defeat the final boss, the 7 heroes. The current fastest time for this game and category is by the full, with a 51 minute and 50 second run achieved on May 18th, 2020. This is another game that isn't too well documented and not ran on the English side of things, so it's very possible to see improvements to all categories, including this one across the board. Moving on to our last game, Romancing SaGa 3, we find ourselves in a game that's actually not as broken as the first two, but just barely. Before we start though, I just want to say that I can't get over the fact that they use a ton of sounds from another absurdly popular RPG. Our featured runner for this video is Shido-kun, the world record holder of the any % category. They start out with Katarina's scenario in order to get a specific glitch with LP in her name. He renames Katarina with specific characters and proceeds through the intro scenes. The run ends up hopping around to a couple towns to recruit Ellen and another character, but on the way they decided that the extra guy they recruited needed to have a few drinks, so they sent him on his merry way at the bar. Going back to the city of Lance, the runner decides Katarina and the gang need more potions. They go to their local potion seller to grab only their strongest potions and weapons. After equipping specific items as the last part of preparation for the upcoming glitch, Shido needs to line up at a specific point on the Yamas highway and reset after saving. Honestly, I think there's something to be said about the upcoming tech here, how runners have come up with ways to not only buffer inputs for pretty much everything in the section just ahead, but also are able to use them to make the next battle entirely scripted. With the power of manipulation and knowing what's going to happen next, Shido triumphantly loses all of his LP and dies to the encounter. Oh, and to top it all off, he becomes invisible and can probably hack the Matrix or something. This is something known as the materialization bug. For lack of better terms, if you set up your equipment, name, members recruited, you can make the game do some really strange stuff. Shido goes to Podori Cave that he ended up at, back to Yamas to talk to the shopkeep. If you enter a shop menu and leave in this state, you can make some specific memory corruption happen which is needed for the upcoming final glitches. To finish up Yamas, we get to watch a short Robin cutscene before Shido heads back to Justrum to recruit Ward and heads to the Ice Lake. Losing the invisibility glitch, Shido gets into one last encounter for the upcoming glitch, and some really crazy things start to happen. The screen goes into something called a tournament mode during the battle thanks to all the things set up until this point, and he can hold A to simply win the battle. With everything set up properly thanks to the type and the amount of items put on the top of the item list, a bunch of stuff in the game changes, including what's available on the world map. This allows access to the dry river area, which is actually the game's debug menu. This is probably the easiest part of the run, and if you have access to this area, you can actually do it too. If you go to the 02 tile on the first screen, and on the next screen into the 0F tile, you actually warp into the abyss. After doing one or two things to prep for probably the hardest battle in the game, Shido goes into the last cutscene and gets ready to fight. Okay, it's actually pretty anticlimactic. He holds the B button down and then he wins and everything. It's really weird. Shido-kun finishes the run with a time of 27:18, which is about 14 minutes faster than the second fastest time for the category. The reason for this is that he uses something called the highway route, which removes the Devil Palace and some other sections from the run. However, this route is considered to be much more difficult than the Devil Palace route, thanks to some ridiculous NPC dodging required mid-run, and the manipulated battle being much longer and harder than the alternative. Since I brought up the Devil Palace route, let's talk about the English patch any % version of this run by a runner named ClearTonic, who has the fastest run for this one with a time of 41 minutes and 36 seconds. This run starts off the same as the previous, with Katarina's scenario, but ends up doing a few things differently. Things such as naming the main character F and paying respects to this broken game. They're shopping for a few pieces of equipment and items needed for the memory corruption later on, but these items are different from the Japanese run. There's also the recruiting of Tate and Skinny Robin and Yamase after the short Robin intro scenario that's required. All this is needed to set up for the Iraqi's castle. One of the big strategies that ends up being used, like the previous run, is RNG manipulation via a reset and frame perfect buffered inputs. However, the difference in this run is that ClearTonic is not doing this to directly do the memory corruption, but rather make an escape from this castle quickly and set the characters up to be at 1 LP before the Iraqi's battle. He does 3 battles to reduce LP and run away, then another to spark dimensional cut on Katarina using the frame perfect buffer tech mentioned. Though, with the attack that sparks the ability, the option has to be selected on either frame 16, 18, or 20 after the menu lands on an attack. So even though there are multiple frames, the trick is still technically frame perfect with a 3 frame perfect window. After all of this, and leaving the castle to finish up a few things, ClearTonic goes back into the castle, leaves his characters completely defenseless, and dies instantly to Iraqi's, activating the glitch and having the game spiral into a similar situation as the Japanese any % world record. Though in this version he gets lost in the desert and turns into Sabin from Final Fantasy VI. He gets to the debug room and then finishes the run. The best part about all this is that the run was done in the SaGa 2018 speedrun marathon on July 29th of 2018. Not many runs have been done of this patch, but notes and resources are available for those who want to take it on. Now that we're done with another game that features crazy glitches and exploits, let's see what Romancing SaGa 3's remaster has in store for us. As a quick note, I'll be referring to the bosses in this version as their English names. I'm doing this on purpose, so please don't yell at me. And speaking of yelling at me, let me know what you think of all these crazy glitches in the comments below, and tell me which run was your favorite. Back to the content you're actually here for, the Romancing SaGa 3 remaster features a start with the same character as the Super Famicom version. After recruiting a few other characters and proceeding through some of the story, the run has a major grinding session of about 13 minutes in the Fire Fortress to get some of the character stats up in order to take on some of the upcoming bosses. Not just that, but it also focuses on the character's sword skill level being increased, which is needed for a special technique later on. To understand how much preparation this all takes, the first devil isn't even fought until about an hour into the run. The Vornius fight even takes a lengthy amount of time to complete, with it clocking in at around 5 minutes this run. This fight is taken first to get the spell called Haste in Time, which cancels out any remaining actions the enemy has left on the turn it's cast. And not only that, but it ensures the party acts first for a certain amount of turns based off the MP spent. Shortly after, the Devil of Wind is taken on with a similar lengthened fight via the epic Sky Dragon scene. The Dragon Gawain does most of the work while Katarina is used to try and spark that specific tech I was talking about earlier. Can I just stop for a second and just say that this fight is actually super cool? I don't know what it is about sky battles and dragons, but they absolutely do it for me. Anyways, after defeating the Devil of the Wind, The run takes us back to the Fire Fortress for a little more grinding of tech and stats to prep for the endgame. There's a technique called Doppelslasher that ends up being the main move used for the endgame and is extremely powerful, power scaling with character sword levels. The last part of the grind is used to master that tech, which allows for all party members to use it and removes the need for it to spark on other characters. After the grind, runners take on the Devil of Fire, Eunice, which actually sounds like what I experienced after eating a bowl of spicy ramen and I end up in the bathroom for an hour, and they take him down pretty quickly. After defeating the third devil and doing a few more quests along the way, the run takes on Alices, the Devil of the Earth. Thanks to all the grinding, he's dispatched rather quickly and the run can finally progress through Huang Castle and into the endgame. The run opts to take on Alice's true form and then the final boss of the game directly after that. The final boss is taken out at 1 hour, 48 minutes, and 49 seconds, and the final JRTA timing ends up being a 2 hour, 6 minute, and 28 second time. This was achieved on August 16th, 2021 by a runner named Sangoru and is the current fastest time for the category. There's another faster run by Chicken Tatsu with a time of 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 19 seconds, but this is of the New Game Plus glitchless category and doesn't require much in the way of grinding or setup outside of a previous file. With Romancing SaGa 3 remastered out of the way, that gives us 6 runs in the series that absolutely destroyed the game, and with almost no runners for these on the English side, the door is wide open for folks to take on the challenge of pushing these games to their limit. It makes me want to sit down and play through these games because all of them sound like really neat speedruns. It might take me the rest of the year thanks to my absurd backlog of games, but I'm sure I'll get there. It goes to show that even small speedrunning communities, like this one, can come up with unique strategies, exploit some wild glitches, and do whatever it takes to beat their favorite games as fast as possible, all while inspiring others to do the same. By the way, go check out the SaGa Speedrunning Discord while you're here. You won't regret it. Stay hydrated, folks, and thanks for watching.